Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today, we continue with the tale of Bahram Gur and his reign. Shongal heard him out and said, "You don't think in a chivalrous way. Come down from your arrogance for a while and be more at ease. There's no point in such foolish things." Bahram rested in his quarters until midday, when a splendid banquet was prepared. When the food was set before Shongal, he said to one of his servants, "Bring that envoy of the Persian king. He talks well, and he's a novelty for us. Bring his companions, too, and set them with the other envoys." Bahram came quickly. He sat down and reached for the food and said nothing. Once the main course was over, musicians were called in, while the guests reclined on gold-worked embroideries, and the scent of musk rose up from the wine. The courtiers became cheerful from the wine, and forgot their anxieties over all that was yet to come. Shongal summoned 2 wrestlers, men who could stand against a devil. They put on their wrestling breeches and began their bout, straining and struggling against one another. The wine had taken effect in Bahram's brain. He picked up a crystal goblet and said to Shongal, "Let me put on those breeches when I fight against a man of comparable might. The wine I've drunk has no effect on me. I'm not unmanned by feasts and luxuries." Shongal laughed and said, "Go on then, and if you bring one of them down, shed his blood." Bahram stood and bent his tall body, crouching in the wrestler's stance. He grasped one of the 2 around the waist like a lion leaping on a wild ass, and threw him against the ground with such force that the man's bones were broken and his face turned pale. Shongal gazed in amazement at Bahram's stature, his broad shoulders, and his strong body. In his own language he said the name of God to himself, and reflected that Bahram had the strength of more than 40 men. When the assembly was drunk, the party broke up and left the jewel-encrusted hall. The sky put on its cloak of Chinese silk, and everyone, young and old, rested from drinking. When night's musky tint turned gold again, and the sun showed its face in the heavens, the Indian king rode out with a polo stick in his hand. His men had brought his bow and some arrows, and he amused himself with these for a while. Then he ordered Bahram to mount and to take the royal bow in his hand, and Bahram said, "Your Majesty, I have a number of horsemen with me who would dearly like to play polo or to shoot at the target. What are your orders for them?" Shongal replied, "Skill with the bow is certainly praiseworthy in a knight. You, with your strength and stature, draw this bow back and show us your skill." Bahram gave his horse its head, and as he galloped forward, he shot an arrow that shattered the target. All the knights and warriors who were there cried out their congratulations together. Shongal became suspicious of Bahram and thought, "No envoy, neither Indian, Turkish, nor Persian, has his strength and glory, or his skill with a bow. If he is himself the king or a great nobleman, it would be best for me to refer to him as the king's brother." He smiled and said to Bahram, "You are skilled and have the qualities of a man of authority. With such strength and abilities, you must be your king's brother. You have the royal fire and a lion's might. You must be more than just a brave warrior." Bahram replied, "Your Majesty, do not mock a simple messenger. I am not of Yazdajir's family, nor am I the king, and it would be a sin for me to refer to the king as my brother. I am just a stranger from Iran, neither a scholar nor a nobleman. Allow me to return now, since the road is long, and I do not want to incur my king's wrath." Shongal said, "Not so fast. You and I still have things to discuss. You should not be in any hurry to leave. A quick departure would not be appropriate. Stay with us. Put your heart at rest, and if you don't want our strong wines, drink new wine." Then he called his vizier and talked to him about Bahram for a while. He said, "This is either Bahram or at least someone more important than a simple warrior. Tell him kindly that he should stay here and not to leave Kannauj. If I tell him, he will be afraid. You can say whatever's appropriate. Tell me the best thing he can do is ingratiate himself with the King of India. Say if you stay near the king and follow his advice, he'll give you the choicest province. You'll be the army commander there and recipient of the taxes in a place where it's always spring and the streams give off the scent of spring, where there are jewels and cash enough to keep a man's heart from sorrow. You have won favor with the king, and he smiles whenever he sees your face. A man who is fortune's favorite will not leave Canouge, where the trees bear fruit twice a year. When you've talked to him in this way, ask him his name, because I'd dearly like to know it. If he is happy to stay here in our country, our glory will be increased by this. I'll quickly make him the leader of our armies and equal to myself in this land." The vizier said this to Bahram, and then asked him his name, indicating that his answer would not be complete if he didn't give it. The color of Bahram's face changed, and he wondered how he should respond to this. Then he said, "Don't shame me in two countries in this way. For treasure or from need, I won't betray my country's king. Our faith says that to rise against our king is neither good nor wise, since good and evil, all we meet with here, will pass away from us and disappear. A wise man does not let ambition lead his soul astray or give his heart to greed. Great Feridun and Kay Khosrow and all the mighty kings who held the world in thrall, where are they now? And Bahram is a king who won't be disobeyed in anything. If I should go against his orders, he won't be content with when once he's punished me. He'll conquer India and bring this land of ancient magic under his command. It's better I return to see once more my valiant king, victorious in war. As for my name, they call me Borzu. This is the name my parents gave to me. Tell Shangal all I've said, so that he'll know that I've been here too long and must go." Vizier went over all he had been told with his king, who frowned and said, "This is pointless chatter. I'm going to arrange something that will bring the splendid warrior's life to its close." Roaming in Shangal's territories was a rhinoceros, so huge that even lions and vultures fled from it, and the whole country was in a deafening uproar. Shangal said to Bahram, "All men respect you, and this is a task for you. You must approach this dinosaur and pierce his hide with your arrows. If your glory can rid our land of this danger, I shall seat you next to myself, and your name will live forever in India." Bahram said, I shall need a guide, and when I catch sight of this animal, by the strength that God has given me, you'll see his hide soaked in blood." Shangal gave him a guide who knew the area where the rhinoceros was lurking. As they approached the palace, the guide described the animal's lair and the great size of its body. He pointed at the thicket where the rhinoceros was and withdrew, while Bahram stood forward. A few Persians were following him, thinking they too would fight against the rhinoceros, but when they saw its huge snout in the distance, and all the vegetation there flattened by its weight, they said as one man to Bahram, "Your Majesty, this is beyond any man's courage, and no matter how valiant a prince you are, people don't fight with mountains and rocks. Tell Shangal that this can't be done, and that you don't have your king's permission for such battle." But Bahram replied, "If God has given me a grave in India, how can my death occur somewhere else? It is impossible even to think such a thing." The young man grasped his bow, as if careless of his life. He ran forward until he came close to the rhinoceros, his brain full of fury, his heart ready for death, and snatched a poplar wood arrow from his quiver. He rained down arrows like a hailstorm until the rhinoceros started to weaken. And when he saw that the animal's time had come, he exchanged his bow for a dagger. He severed the rhinoceros's head and cried, "I do this in the name of the one God who has given me the strength and glory, and at whose command the sun shines in the heavens." He ordered that an ox cart be brought to take the rhinoceros's head out of the thicket. When Shangal saw them in the distance, bringing the head, he had his audience hall hung with brocade, and as the great king sat on his throne, Bahram was ushered into his presence. All the nobles of India and the Chinese knights who were there called down blessings on him, and chieftains went forward with gifts, exclaiming, "No one's feat of bravery can compare with yours." Shangal showed joy outwardly, but his heart was troubled. At times his face was full of smiles, and then a frown would cross his features. Also in that country was a dragon that lived both in the water and on dry land, sometimes swallowing up and wallowing in a lake, sometimes sunning itself on land. Its long tail could encompass an elephant, and it made great waves in the lake's waters. Shangal said to his intimate advisers, "This lion-like envoy sometimes delights me, and sometimes fills me with anxiety. If he stays here, he'll be a great support to me, and I can lead the armies of Kanuj. But if he goes back to Iran, I fear that Bahram will destroy Kanuj. With a subject like this envoy and a king like Bahram, nothing of value will be safe here. I've pondered this all night, and I've thought of another stratagem tomorrow. I'll send him against the dragon, from which he certainly won't escape unharmed. I won't be blamed for this, because he'll only be too eager to fight it." He summoned Bahram and talked with him at length about the deeds of brave warriors. Then he said, "God brought you from Persia to India so that you could cleanse our country of evil, as is the custom of great men. There's something that has to be done, and it's difficult, and it's a dangerous task, but it could end with your becoming wealthy. When you have completed this task, you are free to go with my blessings." Bahram replied, "The heavens will change their courses before I disobey your orders." Shangal continued, "The disaster we're faced with is a dragon. He lives both on dry land and in the water, and he can kill a gaping crocodile. If you can rid India of this monster, then you can take India's tribute back to Iran, and everyone in your country will agree to this. You will also take presents from India like aloes wood and ambergris, and all sorts of other things," Bahram said. "Your Majesty, great Lord of India, as God is my witness, I will eradicate all trace of this dragon, but I don't know where he lives. Someone must show me the way to him." Shangal sent a guide with him to point out the dragon. 30 Persian knights rode with him too, as far as the lake. They saw the dragon looming in the darkness, and the Persian nobles were so alarmed at the sight that they cried to Bahram, "My lord, you shouldn't think of this monster as being like the rhinoceros." Bahram replied, "We must leave the outcome to God. If I am to die fighting this dragon, that will neither increase nor decrease my courage." He readied his bow and selected arrows whose tips had been dipped in poison and milk. Then he showered the dragon with arrows, shooting on horseback, striking it right and left. The steel arrowheads pinned its mouth shut, and the surrounding thorns were burned by the poison it shed. Then Bahram struck its head and mingled blood and poison, and it coursed down its chest. The dragon's body was weakening, and the ground was awash with blood and poison. Bahram drew his glittering sword and split open the monster's head. With his sword and an axe, he hacked off the head and flung the lifeless body to the ground. He had the head dragged to Shangal on a cart, and when Shangal saw it, all India called down God's blessings on Persia that had produced such a strong and splendid knight, who was worthy of combat with a dragon, and whose only equal was his own king. But Shangal's heart was heavy with worry, and his face turned yellow at the thought of Bahram's feats. When night fell, he called his advisers to him, men of his own family and others to whom he had not related, and said to them, "This man of King Bahram's, with that strength and power and authority he has, says that nothing will keep him here, although I have offered him all kinds of glory and splendor. But if he returns to Iran and goes to his courageous king, he'll say our army is weak, and that there are no knights in India. My enemy will be contemptuous of me. To prevent this, I shall cut off his envoy's head. I want to do away with him in secret. What do you say to my plan, and how should I proceed?" His adviser said, "Your Majesty, do not torment yourself in this fashion. To kill a king's messenger would be a foolish act. No one has ever thought like this or followed such a path. Your name would be despised, and a king should be dear to his people. And then an army would come from Iran, and a king like Bahram wouldn't leave a single one of us alive. You must not wash your hands of righteousness in this way. He delivered us from the dragon, and his reward for his troubles should not be that he is killed on our land. He killed both the dragon and the rhinoceros, and he deserves a long life, not death." Shanghal's soul was darkened, and he was unsure what to do. At dawn the following morning he sent for Bahram and talked with him alone, and neither his vizier nor his advisers present. He said, "You charm everyone, and you've become very powerful, and don't be too ambitious. I'm going to give you my daughter in marriage, and I shall do more than I have ever promised. But when I have done this, you must forget about leaving here. I shall make you commander of the army, and you will rule over India." Bahram was silent, and he thought of his throne, his lineage, and his battles. To himself he said, "There's no arguing with him. It would not be shameful to be related to Shanghal, and besides, I shall save my life in this way, and perhaps one day see Persia again. I have been here a long time now. The lion has fallen into the fox's trap." He answered, "I shall do as you say, and your words will be my soul's guide. Choose one of your 3 daughters, and when I see her, I shall call God's blessings down on her." The king was delighted at this response, and had his audience hall decorated in Chinese silk. His 3 daughters came forward to them, gorgeous clothes, their scent, and their beauty. Shanghal said to Bahram, "Go and delight your heart with something you've never seen before." Bahram hurried to them and chose one as lovely as the spring. Her name was Sepanod, and she seemed compounded of modesty and grace, good sense and desire. Shanghal gave him Sepanod, who was as elegant as a cypress, and as pure as a candle that burns without smoke. He then selected a rich treasury and gave his daughter the key to it. Next he gave gold and silver coins and other goods such as aloes wood, ambergris, and camphor to the splendid knights in Bahram's entourage. His jewel-studded chamber was decorated for a feast, and all the nobility of Kannauj came to the festivities, which were presided over by the king. For a week they sat there, carousing happily with wine, and Sepanod, as lovely as wine in a crystal goblet, was seated at Bahram's side. When Bahram had lived with Shanghal's daughter for a while, she realized that he was the king of the world. Day and night she wept with love for him, and her eyes were always fixed on his face. But when Shanghal learned of their mutual love, he ceased to be suspicious of Bahram. Bahram and Sepanod were seated together one day happily, talking of this and that, when he said to her, "I know that you want what is best for me. I want to tell you a secret, but you must see that it remains unknown to anyone else. I want to leave India. Can you agree to this? I'm telling only you about it, and nobody else must know. My situation in Persia, where I am under God's protection, is much better than here. If you wish to go too, your good sense will guide us, and you will be recognized as a queen everywhere. Your father will kneel before your throne." Sepanod said, "You are a proud man. See that you don't wander from wisdom's path. But the best of all women in the world is the one who makes her husband smile continually. My soul will deserve your contempt if it deviates from your intentions." Bahram said to her, "Then find some way to carry out this plan, and speak not a word to anyone." Sepanod replied, "Truly, you are worthy of a throne. I will find a way. If luck helps me, there is a place in the forest not far from here where my father holds religious festivals. It's about 20 leagues away, and it is believed to be sacred. It's customary to weep in front of the idols there. Good hunting for wild asses can be found there, and aloes wood for burning in Kannauj grows in that area. The king and his entourage are going, and there will be such a crush the roads will be blocked. If you want to leave for Iran, wait for 5 days, and be ready to set off when the king leaves the city." Bahram was overjoyed to hear her suggestion, and that night he did not sleep till dawn for thinking about it. The next day, when the sun touched the morning sky, and like a stranger knight prepared to depart, Bahram went out hunting for wild asses. As he left, he said to his wife, "Make everything ready for our departure, but tell no one." All the Persians and his escort went with him, and they reached the shores of a river, where they saw merchants' baggage piled up. They were Persian merchants, men who braved the seas and deserts, and when they saw Bahram's face, the king bit his lip and ordered them not to bow down before him. Wanting to keep his identity hidden, he said to the merchants, "Keep your mouth shut. The situation can be profitable, but also dangerous. If the secret of who I am is known in India, Persia's soil will be drenched in blood. A man who can keep his mouth shut can help me. He needs his lips closed and his hands ready for action. Swear silence till fortune favors us. Swear that if you ever betray King Bahram, you have broken with God and made a pact with the devil. When they had sworn to this, Bahram's heart ceased to worry about their loyalty. He said, "If you would turn my words to diadems, guard my secret as you guard your souls. If the throne loses me, armies will attack Iran from all sides, and there will be no merchants or kings there, no landowners, no army, no throne, and no crown." They wept at his words and said, "May our merchant souls be sacrificed for you, and youth and sovereignty be yours." The king called down blessings on them, and then, entrusting his soul to God, he returned anxiously to his quarters. There he said to his wife, "When King Shangal goes to the sacred grove, a messenger is sure to come from him asking for me. Arrange things with your mother, but in such a way that she doesn't realize your secret. Tell her that Borzu is sick, and may the king excuse his absence." Sepanot told his mother this, and when Shangal was ready to set out for the grove, his wife said, "Borzu is ill. He has to be excused, your majesty, and says that you are not to worry about him. A sick man will only be depressed by such observances as the king knows." Shangal agreed. A sick man should not be thinking of ceremonies. At dawn the following day, Shangal set off from Kanuj with his entourage. When night came, Bahram said to his wife, "My dearest partner, it's time for us to leave." Invoking God's name, he called Sepanot in the saddle, and then he put on his armor and mounted his horse. His lariat was tied to the saddle, and he grasped his mace in his fist. They rode until they came to the river, where they saw the group of Persians asleep. Bahram commandeered a boat for his companions and placed Sepanot in a little skiff. They reached the far shore just as dawn was breaking. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends.